Hello. Welcome to the episode 9 of Take It EV. 9. For today's episode, I went all the way to Milton Keynes to meet with somebody who really knows a lot about electric cars. I went to Milton Keynes EV Experience Centre. It's a place you want to go if you want to test drive, if you want to find out, and if you want to just chat about electric cars. Before we get to the main feature, I have recorded tons of material, so do expect quite a few new episodes with interviews with different people. Phil is still on holidays. I have recently also test driven an electric car that everyone's raving about, so I will have an YouTube review in video of me test driving that car and just talking about my experiences. So please do go to YouTube and search for the Take It EV channel and subscribe. It won't be the usual run-of-the-mill review because everyone's done reviews of that car to death, and I don't want to bore you with yet another, this is the range, this is the button that does X. Today's interview was conducted in a showroom, so there's a lot of background noise, but the person I spoke to is so lovely and has such a great knowledge and patience for somebody like myself who asks tons of questions that it's really, really worth listening to. And if you find this interesting, please do follow us on Twitter at TakeItEV, all one word, facebook.com/TakeItEV. Share, subscribe, the usual thing. The numbers have been growing steadily, so thank you very much to everybody who's shared and follows us on Twitter already. Please give us a shout, feedback, comments, suggestions. I welcome all sorts of interactions. You'll see me posting daily there, so I welcome you to interact. Without further ado, here's an interview with Lewis.
So hi, I'm Lewis. I'm the Assistant Manager at the Electric Vehicle Experience Centre. So we are a not-for-profit entity. We're set up with government grant money in conjunction with Milton Keynes Council. So Milton Keynes is one of a number of Go Ultra Low cities. Specific to our bid to become a Go Ultra Low city, Milton Keynes Council incepted the idea of an experience and education centre. So in Milton Keynes, we were quite lucky that we had quite a head start over a lot of towns and cities in the UK, in the fact that we'd already invested a large amount of money in infrastructure. So Milton Keynes Council had decided that it's one thing, keep putting chargers in the ground, but unless you have a centre and a place where you can explain to people about the infrastructure, about why you should be thinking about using it, the benefits, and your different options that are available, you're not necessarily going to see the uptake just by having charging stations around. Because even talking to the people of Milton Keynes, they're often very surprised about how much charging infrastructure there actually is in Milton Keynes. As EV drivers, I would think a lot of people are aware that Milton Keynes is, one of the premier destinations for charging.
It's an oasis in this country.
Yeah, you don't have to go very far to find a charger. It's quite handy, but it's surprising how many people of Milton Keynes and the surrounding area have no idea about that until you start showing them a map and showing them, how much time, effort and money has gone into the infrastructure of Milton Keynes. So yeah, we're here for free education and advice about everything to do with plug-in vehicles. Nowadays we're sort of starting to slant more heavily towards the pure EVs. We do still have at the moment one plug-in hybrid still on fleet, so it's EVs and plug-in hybrids. We're always here for free, no obligation 20-minute test drives, so you can literally just be walking past the front of the centre on the way to Boots next door to get your sandwich meal deal and decide that a 20-minute drive in an EV takes your fancy. It's very much the same as going into a dealership. The main difference being is we are completely not-for-profit. We're a zero sales environment, so you're not getting any sales pressure. You're going to go for a drive with one of our EV gurus, and they are just going to talk you through the basics of the car, some of the functions of it. They're not going to start talking to you about trim level, about PCP deals, about gap insurance, and
they're going to ask you where you're going to drive, where you're driving currently, and you could trade it in for a good deal. You're not,
yeah.
I get it. Yeah.
And then I suppose really like on top of the 20-minute test drives, the one thing that we do, you could potentially think that we do sell, is longer experiences in the cars. So you can take a car away from us for 4 days, 3 nights for a £50 flat fee. Or we do 7 days, 6 nights, which ranges between £75 to £95, depending on the specific vehicle that you take. So, in a 20-minute drive around the block with us, you're going to get an idea about how the car drives. I can tell you about the ranges that you should be able to expect out of the car, and I can tell you about expected charging times on a rapid charger or a standard speed charger. But until you have to experience that yourself, that's when you know whether it's going to fit in your daily lifestyle.
Yeah.
I can tell you, that a car might take, 30, 40 minutes to 80% on a rapid charger, and you might think that that sounds like a long time, but maybe if you're actually only using the car and you're topping it up for a bit, actually you might be surprised at how quickly you can get a small amount of miles in the car, enough to carry on doing what you need to do. And similarly, on the flip side of that, you might you might think that rapid charging times sound really good for you and what you need it to do, but you might borrow a car from us and you might be sat at a rapid charger for 40 minutes and then decide, actually, this isn't for me right now. And we'd much rather that people make that assessment before they go and purchase a car, rather than potentially buying a car not having all the required information that they need beforehand, going out buying the car and then just having an awful experience because of it, giving the car back early and then just swearing off electric for the next 10 years or something like that. Generally, off of the back of that, if that's the main question, then people want to know how quickly that they can charge them up. And that's quite a surprising one as well, because a lot of people, when you start describing rapid charging times to people, a lot of people aren't aware of rapid charging as a thing, and also a lot of people aren't sort of aware of the rates of standard speed charging. I think a lot of people are still stuck thinking that the main way that you're charging the cars is off 3-pin plugs, and that you're charging a car off a 3-pin plug at home and you're charging your car off a 3-pin plug out and about. A lot of people are expecting much larger charging times.
Interesting. The number one question I get is, how long does it take to charge? And the second one is, how far does it go? And whenever I describe to people that you can charge off the 3-pin plug, they're like, "Oh, really? I thought you have a specialized equipment for this." I'm like,
I suppose maybe not. They're not necessarily always expecting that every charging solution is a 3-pin plug, but they're kind of expecting it's at the rate of a 3-pin plug.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, okay. I think through information that they've heard maybe 5 or 10 years ago about charging times, expecting the cars to take 20 plus hours to charge or things like that. That's what they've based a lot of their information and to whether they think it works for them.
Okay.
So a lot of people are very concerned about the range because they think that is it for them. That. Okay, so the car does 100 miles, so that means I can never drive more than 50 miles away from home, because as far as I'm aware, the only charging solution is going to take way longer than I need. So I need to have a battery that's going to be able to drive me to my destination and back without any need for charging.
Where can I charge this new fandangled electric vehicle? Is a question in different snarky way. I get asked, so how do you respond to that question? Where can I charge it?
So we've got a very large map front and centre as you walk into the centre. It's a live map of the Polar network.
Okay.
So the centre is run by BP Chargemaster. They are the people who are basically running the centre on behalf of the council as a sort of a not-for-profit vested interest. the polar map on the front wall is a live map. It's showing you utilization. It's got blue and green pins to show you chargers that are currently free and chargers that are currently in use. So that's a good tool to be able to show people charging. Obviously, that's only showing you one network. And off the top of my head, the BPE Charge Master network, the Polar network, is only about 40% market share at the moment. So we utilise that map more often than not to show people the amount of charging infrastructure that's around. There's another iPad at the front on the way in. That we normally defaultly show as that map, and there's one on the back desk as well that's always showing that map.
Okay.
It's also trying to, people are normally asking that about where they can charge their car because potentially because they've not got a great idea about the ranges and how often that they would need to charge.
Yeah.
How often they would need to charge the car. If you had access to off-street parking, a driveway or a garage or something like that, and were able to get a home charging unit installed, then you potentially find that 80% of your charging would be done at home, and it'd be the rare occasions when you actually need to use the charging infrastructure out and about.
Yeah, when we bought the Leaf, we did not have a home charger, or we did not have off-street. Well, we did have off-street parking, but we lived in London at the time, in a block of flats. So we couldn't have our own dedicated charger for a year and a half. So we purely relied on the public infrastructure and the garage with a rapid charger.
Yeah, that's very similar to me. So I've got a 22 kilowatt first generation Renault Zoe, and I live in a top floor flat. Obviously, I've got the nice position of living in Milton Keynes, the charging oasis as you call it.
Yeah.
So prior to coming and working at the centre, so I've been driving. I'm actually on my second Renault Zoe, but I've been driving electric now for maybe about the same sort of time as you, 3 and a bit years. So prior to coming and working at the centre, I was wholly reliant on the charging infrastructure of Milton Keynes. Now, admittedly, for me, there is 2 rapid chargers about a 10-minute walk away from my flat, so that would be where I'd do a lot of charging. Otherwise, it'd just be in and around Milton Keynes, doing lots of occasional top-up charges. Nowadays, at the centre, I'm lucky with it being in the centre MK shopping complex. We've got a lot of these 7 kilowatt double-socketed posts outside, so that's where I tend to do the vast majority of my charging nowadays.
That's where I'm plugged in currently, so
yeah.
I hopefully it will be fully charged by the time I'm finished. It's great. Well, the other question is how far does they go, but we already covered that. The other question is with variants, destination is, can I drive to Scotland every weekend as I do now?
Yeah, Scotland.
Because my family lives whatever.
Scotland and Cornwall, it's surprising how many people like to go to Scotland and Cornwall so often. It's obviously, the cars will not get to Scotland and Cornwall from Milton Keynes on one charge. I mean, we're getting there, an E-Nero will do 250 miles quite easily, and if you were a little bit more serene about it, you can get much higher figures out of it. It's definitely a bit of an efficiency beast, the E-Nero at the moment. It's something that's going to require you to plan your journey, plan some stops. But we have had people borrow cars from us and have racked up large amounts of mileage in a short period of time. I've not really had people take the cars, as far as I'm aware, as far as Scotland, unless I'm forgetting, but we have had a number of Cornwall trips from our cars.
But is that a common question as well?
It is, definitely. People are like, what if I want to go to Scotland? What if I want to go to Cornwall? And it's about talking to them and drilling down, okay, are you just asking that to find the limitations of the car, or is that something that you do quite often? And, it might be somebody that then turns around and says, I like to go, every summer, and it's every summer, every other summer? Okay, it's been a couple of years since I've gone, but I might want to go in the near distant future.
I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, and it's trying to ascertain, okay, well, are you in a one-car household? Oh no, actually, I've got 3 cars. Okay, so you want to be replacing the car replacing one of your combustion cars with an EV that's fit for a certain purpose, and potentially if you've got access to other vehicles, then it means that come that trip, if it ever happens, if it's something that you're actually going to do, when you need to drive to Cornwall or Scotland, then you've got another car that's capable of doing that journey. But sometimes my flippant response is, why would you want to drive to Scotland when you can get on a plane? It's not quite as
or
easy.
a train.
Or a train. It's not quite as easy to plane or train to Cornwall from Milton Keynes anyway.
No.
But
Scotland.
I've done a minibus to Edinburgh once before, and I will never do that ever again. So and that was with no charging stops. That's was it a petrol or diesel minibus? I can't remember, but that was no stops, and I won't be doing that again. Next time it'll be plane or train. So.
Yeah, people always downplay the need to stop. They think they can do 800 miles in a couple of hours.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's normally also, it's like, well, how long do you like to drive without stopping? And some people will be like, I'll drive 1,000 miles without stopping, or whatever crazy figure it might be. And it's like, well, that's probably not the safest option. And I quite, it's maybe something that I didn't used to do before I started driving EV, but I actually quite enjoy a stop now. It sort of gives you the opportunity to refresh yourself, make sure your brain's still firing on all cylinders, and you're not going to make any like silly mistakes. It's stretch your legs, have a drink, go to the toilet.
We quite often, and I found that from other people, ever since we got the car, and this is our only car in the household, we plan the trip so that we can stop somewhere nice along the way and explore like local towns, so we can just instead of always plugging into a rapid charger, we'll stop somewhere and plug into a 7 kWh post, stop for 2 hours, meal about, and then set off again. And we've discovered so many nice places that we would never have stopped.
You're planning your route around the availability of chargers, which is often sometimes it's taking you off of the beaten track a little bit. And there are definitely some nuggets to explore.
Another question that I often get, and I don't know if you guys do, but is somebody walks past my car when I'm charging, and they ask me, "But you do have an engine, right?"
They'll a lot of the time. So we've at the moment we've got 4 different cars in the showroom across 4 different brands, and when you say to someone that it's pure electric, you'll still get a little bit further into the conversation, and at which point somebody will like, well, there's no petrol backup. There's nothing. It's just pure electric. I think obviously a lot gets said about like hybrid cars, either mild hybrids or plug-in hybrids, or cars like the range extended styled cars like an Ampera or the BMW i3 Rexes, which maybe creates a little bit of confusion, whereby people are still not fully understanding that a fully electric car, a BEV, an EV, is actually just battery and electric motor, and that's it. It's people not wanting to let go as well. So more recently, I suppose, since we're on to the 3rd generation of BMW i3s, the 120 amp hours, a lot of people are not necessarily that happy about the fact that they're no longer selling range extended versions of them. But again, that's people trying to hang on to combustion and having like a fallback all the time.
It's like a safety net. How often do you get asked about I find that people often ask about hybrids because it's like a safety zone, like you say, so it's supposed to be the best of both worlds. It's the phrase that I often hear. What do you like when you have people coming in and they kind of, they're very sheepish about like making that step to the other side?
So I mean, our main goal here is to try and ascertain what somebody's needs are for a car. So there will be certain scenarios whereby a plug-in hybrid might make more sense for somebody if they're describing certain sets of circumstances. But often, sometimes people are just going the plug-in hybrid route because they don't think a range of other cars is going to work for them. So they'll describe scenarios whereby, I think a plug-in hybrid will be really good for me or my other half because I'm just doing lots of like short journeys all the time, and that'd be covered by a plug-in hybrid. And then if you have, then try and explain to them, like, okay, well, you say you're doing like 10, 15 mile journeys at a time. Well, do you know that there's plenty of cars that will do over 100 miles on a full charge, and you've got none of the increased costs of a combustion engine car. With cheaper servicing, you've got no road tax to pay, and it will often drive a lot better than either a plug-in hybrid or a standard hybrid. Have more power available to it. Essentially, if you're getting a plug-in hybrid and you're driving around in electric mode all the time, you're just essentially carrying around dead weight. And generally, in a plug-in hybrid, the electric motor will have less power output to it than the combustion engine. So you're sort of sacrificing yourself on power when you should have just bought the pure EV with a bigger electric motor with more power output for it, and maybe swap the weight of the combustion engine for batteries.
My co-host Phil, he's got 3 kids, and there's no reasonably priced EV for 5 people to take around long journeys. So he got himself an Outlander, and he's been driving a 24 kilowatt-hour Leaf for like 2 years beforehand. So he's got a very it was one of the episodes was actually him explaining the downsides and kind of a real review of an Outlander from somebody who actually doesn't want to play it up. That there's he's I wouldn't say disappointed, but he's not. He's just he is disappointed by all the everyone's saying, oh, this can do 20, 30 miles on a single charge, which it cannot. It's terrible up the hill. If you run out of electricity, the petrol engine is just struggling with the car is fully loaded. And it's just it's a terrible compromise. Basically, it's not good in either mode on its own.
Yeah.
So he's not pleased with the PHEV, and that's supposed to be the best one out there. Everyone's raving about it being an EV with just an engine and a 4x4 and all that.
Yeah, I mean, for us, if somebody is desperate to go plug-in hybrid route and isn't willing to maybe give the EVs a go, I would always think that a plug-in hybrid is sort of a stepping stone. It's a gateway to pure electric driving. The vast majority of people coming in who we talk to who might be current plug-in hybrid owners, once you talk to them, for them it will always be generally about whether it be an Outlander or a Nero PHEV or a 3 or 5 Series BMW plug-in hybrid, whatever it might be. For them, it's always about I've only spent £50 in fuel in the last 6 months. At which point, it's trying to get them to understand that if for them they're just trying to save the most amount of fuel and do the most amount of EV driving, a pure EV would have probably been a better route to go. But obviously, it's sometimes it's size and shape of vehicles that's a real determining factor for people going PHEV. But you generally find that through people's experiences with PHEV that they want to go pure EV the next time.
Yeah. Okay. Do you ever get anyone asking you about the self-charging hybrids? What about them self-charging hybrids?
Yes, that is, maybe not a day goes by without somebody referencing self-charging hybrids. I mean, we've all dealt with it enough times now to try and stay relatively calm about it. It's just trying to explain to people that a self-charging hybrid is a gimmicky marketing tool, and that the car is essentially charging through combustion engine. It's not got some magical system that is making electricity from nowhere. You are burning fossil fuels to generate electricity to put back into the battery. A relatively small battery by comparison to anything that we deal with here in the centre, to then power, again, a relatively small electric motor. it's also, it's explaining that the cars do have, all the cars we deal with have regenerative braking, so you could make an argument to say that they are self-charging. They are using regenerative braking to charge the batteries. It's just, and then explaining to them the kind of the difference that you get between a mild or closed hybrid, a self-charging hybrid, and a plug-in hybrid, in the fact that you've got a bigger battery available to you in a plug-in hybrid. You've got you generally got an EV button which enforces pure EV driving. Up to relatively high speeds as long as you're not too heavy with your right foot, whereas self-charging hybrids generally are transitioning at quite a low speed from full EV to sort of combustion power.
The other questions that I have about, Milton Keynes is great. Like all the EV drivers know. Like as soon as I got interested in the electric cars, I looked at the PlugShare, which is the app that I use personally, and I looked at that place with tons of chargers. You look at the map and there's some chargers dotted about, and then somewhere in the country there's millions of them basically, seemingly, and that was Milton Keynes. But do you think there should be more places like this anywhere else in the country? Is there anyone interested in actually opening one somewhere else?
So part of me is protective and it's no one else can have a centre like us. It's Milton Keynes only. We need to be the forefront. But no, realistically, all of us here, we just want to see as many people getting in EVs as possible. And I definitely think that this is the way to do it. A lot of people will come to us saying that they much prefer coming to us than a dealership model of things. Obviously, you go into a car dealership and they're actively trying to sell you a car. That is their job. That is their purpose, their reason for being there. Whereas it's quite us here at the centre. It's quite interesting where the background that all of us come from. None of us currently come from any sales orientated background, whether it be car sales or general sales. Most of us are from sort of customer experience, customer service style roles previously to the centre. So our focus is around trying to help people. It's trying to ascertain their needs and trying to give them options that would help them. As for other centres, the main massive advantage that we had in Milton Keynes is the large grant that we received from the Department for Transport through the Office of Low Emission Vehicles. And that's what allows us to operate in the way that we do. We're talking multi-million-pound grant to mean that the centre can be sustainable for a 5-year project, including the acquisition and retrofitting of the unit here in Centre MK. This actually used to be two units, so this is 2 retail units that have been mashed together. It's also it's allowing us to, although we have working partnerships with the manufacturers. Currently we're working with BMW, Volkswagen, Kia and Renault. They do financially contribute to the project, but the government grant far outweighs the financial contribution of the manufacturers, to the point that they don't sort of have any sway in what we're saying to people and how we're going about what we're doing.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, we have a lot of talks. There'd be a lot of people, maybe a week doesn't go by whereby I have somebody come in and say, talk to me about the centre because I want to do the same thing as you.
Okay.
But for somebody to do the same thing as us, it has to be a zero sales environment as far as I'm concerned. I mean, there are a lot of showrooms and sales centres popping up now, which are dedicated to EVs, and they will have a lot of knowledgeable people there, and they'll try and be talking to you about real world miles and experiences rather than talking to you about WLTP and NEDC figures and things like that.
Yeah.
But still, with a view in the back of the mind that they're interested in trying and sell you something. There is a handful of other go ultra low cities, and it just happens to be that they are doing other initiatives. They're not spending all their money on pure infrastructure. They will do a lot of other projects whereby that they will have they'll have like pop-ups and where they have cars on displays and test drive events, and they'll reach out to local businesses and things like that. But it really helps us in Milton Keynes because we've got a base of operations. It means that we have a centre. It means that we can easily manage a larger fleet of vehicles because we have space to sort of
chargers and
space and chargers to store them and to use them. We'd love to see other people replicate what we're doing, or we'd love to have offers and things on the table for us to help open other centres. It at the moment, unfortunately, does just boil down to the bottom line, to the cost factors involved.
Yeah.
All of the vehicles that we have here at the centre, which is roughly, we have over roughly sort of 50 different vehicles. At the moment, all of the vehicles are owned by the centre, so none of the vehicles are on loan from manufacturers. So, see, there's a large capital cost involved in the purchase of those vehicles. So the vehicles will be purchased from the manufacturers that we partner with, and discounted rates and deals will be done. But there still needs to be some cash to be able to facilitate that. In Milton Keynes, we're quite lucky because all the local dealerships are aware of the infrastructure, and that it's a lot easier for them to talk up and sell an EV. We do sort of work semi with the local garages. So I will start talking to people, and they will come in and say, I've been to the BMW garage and they said come and see you guys. I've been to Volkswagen or Kia or Renault, and they said pop in and see you guys. I suppose it's a knowledge thing, and if you're going in and you're talking to a salesman and they're fully versed in petrol and diesel, but they're not up to speed with electric, they're not going to really feel comfortable with trying to sell you something that they've got no idea about. But yeah, the advantage for those guys here in Milton Keynes is a lot of them have large dedicated EV sections to their garages, because they know about Milton Keynes and what it's trying to achieve. But also they'll be more than willing to send people across to us. Sometimes they might not have cars available, and we're always aiming to have one of each car available to test drive. And also, the garages will be aware of the longer experiences that we do, which potentially the garages won't have the ability to do that. A lot more garages nowadays are doing these like 48-hour test drives, but you have to have availability of vehicles, and potentially they're not sitting on the spare EV stock to be able to allow people to take cars away off of them for multiple days at a time. Whereas that's kind of really what we're geared towards, and it's then understanding that the garage might have sent us someone across, but eventually when that we give them all the information and they have all the driving experience with us, that person is then going to need to return to a garage. We can't sell them a car from the centre. There's no commission or referral fees to the centre. If somebody comes in and says, tries a car and then right, I'm ready to buy, realistically, the only way that I can help them from then on is by pointing in the direction of the local garage, giving them a name or address of somebody to contact or give a call, etc.
Well, do you have any advice to people like myself or any other EV drivers who get questions? What is the best way? What would be your advice? What would be the best way to talk to these people who are curious about these things?
So it's from experience, it's always good to try. Some people are very much up for an argument. We'll find it in here that people have some vague understanding about what we're doing, and they'll want to come in and they'll want to pick fault at things. So it's all about just trying to stay calm and just make yourself clear in what you're trying to say to people, and just try and lay the facts out for them. If you're trying to give them all of the information and let them make their own decision about it, it's normally a much better way to come about it, rather than trying to force your opinion on someone. If you say to someone, well, you can run a full electric car for maybe somewhere between 3 to 5 pence per mile, and that there's currently no road tax to pay on the car, and that you should expect cheaper full dealership services on the vehicle, that there's the ever-growing number of places that you can charge your car across the UK, and that you could potentially be charging your car at home on your driveway, so that every morning you wake up, you've got a fully charged car ready and waiting for you to go, potentially even preconditioned. That it's just laying all that information out, so that realistically, once you've been given all of that information, it's going to be very difficult for you to sort of shrug that off and decide that actually that's not something that you're interested in. Why wouldn't you be interested in saving money? And that's before you even start talking about things like the green aspects of the car, the zero tailpipe emissions, potentially running the car from renewable electricity, either from solar panels on your home, which is going to decrease your costs, or even just the carbon footprint of your car. And then again, it's even that's before you've even started talking about the driving experience as well. I mean, you'll know as an EV owner like myself that a lot of it is down to the way that the car drives. It's that if somebody told me that I had to drive a combustion engine car home tonight, yes, I'd be concerned about the tailpipe emissions of the car and the the fact that it's going to cost me more money to drive home. But I'd also be concerned about the fact that it's not going to drive as nice as my EV is to drive. It's not going to be direct drive, automatic, seamless delivery of power. It's not going to be smooth. It's not going to be quiet. All of those things that we learn to love as EV drivers.
It's not going to have the torque.
Yeah, that as well. It's not going to have the torque. I'm going to be beating less people off the traffic lights or the or gaps at roundabouts.
It's something that every EV owner loves, but they don't want to be talking about, because obviously you don't want to be bragging about you being the quickest. But it is true that quite often I find myself overtaking people very quickly, and then seeing somebody else behind me in a combustion engine car trying to catch up, and even in the leave they're having a hard time.
It's why the main priority for us is to try and get people like in the cars. To have the opportunity to not book anything, just turn up and go out for a 20-minute spin. For us, the best visitors to the centre are people who have never driven EV before, because it's getting them in a car and then just watching them sort of have that light bulb moment of, this is really nice to drive, and it's much quicker than I thought it would be as well. Like, this doesn't hang around, and I can see the number on the dashboard telling me how many miles I can do, and that's higher than I thought it would be. All those sort of things.
So, in conclusion, if anyone has any questions, or you want to point your family member or a bystander to a place where they can get all the questions answered, nobody has to book any slots to see you guys.
No,
you
so
can just turn up,
you can just turn up and walk in and have a chat. I mean, if you want to do some drives with us, we would normally say either give us a call or give us an email or through the any of the inquiry sections on our website, just to check that if you're making a special trip to us, that cars that you might be interested in driving are actually available. That some unforeseen circumstances haven't happened that means that the car isn't on the road. But also, like, our longer experiences in the cars are getting quite popular. So if you're interested in taking cars away from us for a prolonged period of time, you're normally looking at about a 2-week sort of lead time, wait time, to get into our booking calendar for those sort of things. But again, it can be quite handy to come in and try multiple things. That's the beauty of us as well. Like, I challenge you to find somewhere where you could come in and you could drive a BMW for 20 minutes, and then go out and drive a Volkswagen, and then go out and drive a Kia, and then go out and drive a Renault. Giving you the opportunity to get a real good view of the different EVs that are out there.
And unlike the petrol or diesel cars, they all drive slightly different. They're all kind of different experiences, not just interior-wise, but actually the driving characteristic-wise. And I find that the EVs are actually much more diverse in the way they're manufactured. There's a bit more, it's a clean slate basically, and manufacturers have done.
They've done different things.
They've flavoured the cars in a different ways. Whereas with the petrol and engine cars, with the emissions restrictions and all the other, and obviously the fuel economy, they have to make certain choices. And obviously, quite a lot of petrol and diesel cars are manufactured, or their chassis are manufactured by, or their engines and such are manufactured by one or two manufacturers, even though they have a different badge. You're driving essentially the same thing, it's just with a different top.
Yeah.
Whereas with the electric cars, still much more diverse and interesting. I don't know if you would agree, but
yeah, they all go about things in different ways. Just talking about like some of the cars that we've got. We've got the BMW i3 is a rear-wheel drive car, which is different to the other cars that we've got. Some cars have different levels of regenerative braking that's adjustable. Some car, the i3 again, it only has one level of regenerative braking, and you can't turn it off. Some cars have got manual handbrakes, some have got electric handbrakes. They've all got like different levels of power to them, and they've all got different battery sizes and therefore ranges to them. So there is a real spread of different options to you, available to you, different shapes and sizes of vehicles. If you need a car with a big boot, then there's a couple of different options available. Yeah. If you're not too fussed about the size of boot, then there's some things that you've got more options available to you.
Okay, so what's the website if anyone wants?
So we are evexperiencecenter.co.uk. You can also find us on various social media platforms. Twitter tends to be our main one. You can find us at EVEC_MK. We also do Instagram and Facebook, but it's pretty much the same way to find us. The beauty is the zero sales environment for us. We're just here to answer your questions, try and bust those myths that you might have heard, or you might have watched an episode of Top Gear 5 years ago or something like that, and that's what you're basing all of your EV knowledge on. We're just here to bust all those myths and try and do it in a friendly and helpful way.
Great. Right. Thanks very much.
No problem.
All right.
Once again, thanks to Lewis for his time. It was really amazing to look at the way they operate, and just to hear all the stories. And these guys have tremendous amount of knowledge, and they can patiently and very well answer all your questions. So the MK Experience Center is well worth the visit, whether you are an existing EV owner, you're thinking about electric cars, or whether you have somebody in your family, or you've just met somebody who wants to know more about electric cars. Just send them their way. Please also note that all the information that Lewis and I have provided has been valid as of the time of the recording, which was sometime in the mid-June, and things might have changed since. So any questions, any cars, models, companies that they work with, please refer to their website and just talk to them if you have any questions. As always, thank you guys for listening, and I have mentioned already the Twitter. Please subscribe, share, and I get to the point where I've been doing this long enough now that hopefully the quality is much better, and I have fixed and addressed loads of mistakes that I've made in the past. I also have to mention that this episode has been sponsored by ClearProp Limited, a mobile app development studio. The links will be in the description. If you know anyone who needs a mobile application, has a mobile application that needs maintaining, updating, give them a shout. There is also a support link in the description. If you feel like giving a few pounds, few dollars towards the podcast, please do so. It costs a bit of money to set it up and run it, so every donation is appreciated. You don't have to do it. This is completely voluntary. I'll keep on doing what I'm doing, but please consider it. And I shall see you in the episode number 10.
Take it, EV.